So we're here with Mike Adams. He's the health ranger, Austin, Texas. And for the record, Mike, could you just state your name?
My name is Mike Adams, the health ranger, the editor of naturalnews.com.
Great, Mike. And let me ask you, how did you get started with your quest for truth and diving into, all this nutrition and health?
I got started with all this by waking up and realizing that my doctors didn't tell me real information about health. I used to be borderline diabetic, I used to be borderline obese, I was hypoglycemic, I had high cholesterol, lots of issues. And the traditional physicians, they weren't giving me information that was helping me. They were like, here, take more pills. And they would say things like, hypoglycemia, that doesn't even exist, it's all in your head. And so I began to learn and read some books that were more sort of alternative at the time, which are now mainstream, like sugar's bad for you. Everybody knows that now, but 15 years ago, it wasn't as common. And just began to educate myself and learn information, learn how to get healthy and stay healthy, improve brain function, improve immune function, stopped getting vaccinated, stopped taking all medications many, many years ago, stopped eating processed meat, no processed meat. I don't even eat red meat anymore. I don't use caffeine. I don't drink any alcohol whatsoever. I don't use recreational drugs. Not that I'm for legalizing marijuana for people who want to do that, but that's just not my choice. Right. So through these habits, I've been able to just stay healthy.
That's great. Now, you mentioned more of a personal quest for your own as far as, educating yourself. Once you started to learn what you did learn, what was your reaction personally? Were you surprised with what you were finding out?
One of the big aha moments in my life was realizing we've been lied to. We're lied to constantly on television. Almost everything in the news is either disinformation or misinformation. There's a corporate agenda behind it all. And that agenda may be, buy this food, keep consuming it so that you get sick, so that you'll buy these medicines, and then keep buying more medicines. It may be an agenda of support war, so that the military-industrial complex, which is very real, can make more money, replacing the bombs they're dropping on brown people somewhere. They always have brown skin, it seems like. Like George Carlin says, bombing the brown people. But it's not funny, it's really an atrocity. It's a crime against humanity. But, the disinformation comes from so many quarters. The official press releases of the FDA about what's safe and what isn't safe, mostly just lies. The EPA is the same way. The DHS is the same way. The USDA is the same way. And corporations like Monsanto, of course, are feeding us literally all kinds of disinformation, because seeds are information, genetic information. They're feeding us that disinformation and really harming our agricultural future. So, the more you wake up and start to realize that we're being fed disinformation, the easier it is to start accepting reality and learning about the real issues that affect our lives.
All right. I can't agree with you more with the corporations, as you mentioned. What it seems like is, these regulatory agencies that you mentioned aren't really doing their jobs, which is what I'm learning, looking out for you or I. They're more or less looking out for corporate interests.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the regulatory agencies, they say we're here to protect the public, we're here to make sure that trade stays fair and to protect agriculture and so on. Well, what they're really doing is protecting corporate interests in those areas. So the FDA, its main job is to be the marketing department of the drug companies. Promote drugs, promote pharmaceuticals and vaccines, and then outlaw or criminalize natural supplements, dietary supplements, nutrition, superfoods, or censor them so that people can't really tell the truth about how those supplements can prevent diseases that are treated by the drug companies that make profit from you being sick. You see, there's one thing that's true in the health industry is that you are more valuable to the corporate system sick than healthy. When you're healthy, you're no longer a customer. You're out the exit door, and in their minds, you've taken their profits with you. For you to stay profitable to them, you have to stay sick, stay dependent, stay enslaved in the medical system that keeps you getting increasingly sick. So it's like you take one drug and it causes another symptom. For example, you take antidepressants, SSRI drugs, they create blood sugar disorders. Then you have diabetes. Then you get on a diabetes drug, it causes liver damage. Then you get on a liver drug, it causes kidney failure. Then you get on dialysis. This is a vicious cycle. And chemotherapy destroys the liver and the kidneys and the brain all at once. So you get dementia and Alzheimer's, which is a big profit center for drug companies. You get dialysis profits out of chemotherapy patients. And then they've got all the chemotherapy people trained to run around and say, I'm a cancer survivor. Well, not really. You're a chemo survivor. You know, not to say that these people don't have great hearts and great courage, but the bigger danger to your health is the chemotherapy, not the cancer tumor.
I've heard that quite a bit, that it causes and spreads the cancer throughout the system, is it not? Or
It can, depending on the type of cancer, but mostly you got to think about cancer tumors as being a collection of millions of cells surrounding what are called cancer stem cells, the root cells that can recreate the cancer. And when you give someone chemotherapy, it can shrink the tumor, and the doctor says, yay, we're winning, the tumor is smaller. But all it did is it killed the non-stem cell cancer cells. So that tumor can then grow right back, right where it left off. Right. So the chemotherapy, all it really did is poison you and damage your brain, damage your kidneys, damage your liver, but it did not cure your cancer.
Mm-hmm. Let's shift gears a little bit and touch on a topic I know you're familiar with, and that would be fluoride. Speaking of, let's get our non-fluoridated water here.
Is this working okay? Is this what?
Yeah, that looks great.
Was it great, Paul?
Okay, I'm just going to film over it a little bit.
By the way, I love the artwork that you guys did. Careful, don't spill this stuff on you as they're dumping it into the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
It's been used everywhere. Across
everywhere.
The internet.
Yeah, it's great. And when I learned it was you, I was like, oh, that's awesome.
That was from like 2005.
Yeah, it's an older one, huh?
Yeah.
Paul, you good, Paul?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So as we mentioned, fluoride. Let's just kind of back it up with the fluoride a little bit, and if we could, maybe could you touch on the history of fluoride?
Sure.
What you know?
Yeah. Well, fluoride is really a clever way for industry, the mining industry, chemical processing industries, aluminum smelting and processing industries, to eliminate their toxic industrial waste without having to pay for it to be handled as industrial waste. They just slap a new label on it, fluoride. They sell it to cities, and the cities dump it into the water supply. But what is labeled fluoride is not naturally occurring fluoride, like you might find in the ground. It's actually a collection. It can be over 100 different chemicals, including some radioactive chemicals, including many cancer-causing chemicals, including heavy metals, neurologically damaging elements, that are called fluoride. And then this is dumped into the water supply, and the cities have the doctors and dentists convinced that this is somehow good for your teeth. It's sort of like trying to protect your skin from sunburn by chugging sun lotion. Why would you drink it? You know, if fluoride is good for your teeth, it only really makes sense to swish it around your teeth and spit it out, right?
Right.
It's a topical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the only science behind it, is as a topical treatment. So why would you swallow it?
Right.
Well, it makes no sense. But it was a great way for these industries to get rid of toxic industrial waste. And it's been a decades-long scandal that is about to be blown wide open. But the reason fluoride has been so, quote, successful is because it has a side effect of dumbing down the population. I mean, it's true that in Nazi Germany, fluoride was used as an experimental type, a mind control or a compliance chemical, that it sort of saps your will. You know, it makes you just go along with whatever you're told. So in modern society today, you have fluoride coming through the water, and then you have television. So the fluoride alters your brain to make you more open to suggestion and more obedient. And the television news tells you, support war. You know, vote for Obama or Romney or whoever the case may be. Vote for these people, and your mind can't resist it because you're on fluoride. Mm-hmm. It's a medication. It's a psychoactive substance. Now, it would be illegal for any doctor in America to give you a medication without a prescription, without a diagnosis. So why is it okay for an entire city to medicate every child, every teenager, every adult, every elderly person in the entire city with a psychoactive drug that they call fluoride with no diagnosis, no prescription, not even anybody seeing a doctor, and absolutely no consideration of the interactions with other psychiatric or psychotropic drugs.
In addition to that, I don't mean to jump in, but you can't control the dose. We
can't.
We learned from Paul Conant, right, Paul?
That's exactly right, yeah. You can't control the dose of fluoride. So you end up with people overdosing. You end up with people having interactions with other medications. And I think that fluoride is a significant contributor to the true insanity of some victims in society today who they lose their minds, they go crazy. And it's this cumulative burden of all these chemicals, and fluoride is definitely one of them.
Yeah, we've learned it's definitely cumulative within our bones and teeth, and as we both know, what we're learning is dental fluorosis. It should be the first telltale sign for parents, you would think, or anybody. Wait, too much of this is going to ruin the teeth? Like,
yeah.
How do they? I just never, try to figure out how the ADA and everybody gets around this, and they don't see it.
Well, it's real simple. The ADA and these other so-called authorities, they simply try to assert their authority while abandoning logic and science. So if you come up to them with a scientific question, like, show me the evidence, the reliable evidence in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study of fluoride versus non-fluoridated populations, what's the long-term effects on the children? They can't show you any study that favors fluoride because it's a poison, chemical poison. So instead of using science, they use their authority. They say, how dare you ask such a question? We are the authorities, we are the doctors, we are the dentists, and therefore that makes it true. That's sort of like the king declaring this is king's law. The king declares you innocent or guilty just based on a whim. Science is thrown out the window with fluoride, with vaccines, with GMOs. There is no science. It's all fabricated. It's like the emperor's new clothes. It's non-existent. But they do have authority, and they do love to bully people, and they do love to kill people. I mean, they love to see people made infertile, and they'd love to see the population decrease.
So let me ask you that you mentioned population decreasing. Question, is it just about getting rid of waste personally, do you think? Or is there something more to it with the fluoride?
It's a multiple layered agenda with fluoride. It's number one, it's a convenient way to get rid of industrial waste. Mm-hmm. Number two, it's also a convenient way to mass medicate the population with a psychotropic drug, which is this fluoride. It's really often hexafluorosilicic acid, which is psychoactive. Mm-hmm. How psychoactive is it? Well, Prozac is made almost entirely from fluoride molecules. I mean, it is like SSRI drugs are similar molecularly to some of the elements in fluoride. So it is a drug, and that's just part of the agenda. Yes, fluoride is a drug. Fluoride is a medication, a mind-altering medication that is given to masses of people with no prescription, no doctor's visit, no oversight, no scientific testing, and no moral or ethical justification whatsoever. It is one of the longest running chemical scams of modern civilization.
I don't know if you're familiar with in San Diego, they just recently lost the battle with fluoride, and it's, I believe, a year ago, right around this time, they started fluoridating. And I thought that was interesting because, most folks think that it's heading in the other direction where people starting to, 11 communities last year alone, I think, had it removed. And how is Austin doing with the fight on fluoride?
Well, what's interesting in this battle for fluoridation versus clean water, mm-hmm. And remember, to have clean water, you can't have fluoride in it because it's an industrial chemical. So citizens who want safe drinking water, and that's the name of one of the groups, Citizens for Safe Drinking Water, have to stand up and fight against contaminating it with chemicals. But what you're seeing nationwide is the small local communities are winning the war against fluoride. They're getting it removed. But then what's happening is the states are coming in, and at the state level, they're passing legislation to mandate water fluoridation across the entire state. So the ADA and the global controllers, the influencers who want the population to be very docile, very sheep-like, so they will accept misinformation quite readily. They've learned to go after the state-level bureaucrats and lawmakers, or even national level. They've stopped spending time in small cities because they know in cities and communities they will lose because citizens want clean water. You know, why would you want to contaminate your clean water with fluoride? I mean, it makes no sense at any level.
Well, I think it's important too because, you know, what we're running into is a lot of folks who say, well, I don't drink tap water. I drink bottled water. And you know, what we're learning, Paul and I, through this journey is we've tested, you know, the majority of the bottled waters companies that are out there, and just traces of fluoride just almost as high as tap water, what we're finding.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important. And in addition to that, orange juice, milk, you know, regardless of anything with water in it, you know, whether what are you showering with?
Right.
You know, our skin's one of the biggest organs, and
well, think about this. Most of the fluoride that's put into the municipal water supplies across the country is actually sprayed on crops. I mean, far more water goes into agriculture than goes into human consumption. Fluoride is really a way to disperse a chemical, to get rid of it, rather than get it into the bodies of human beings. If you want to get something into the body of the public water supply is the least efficient way to do it. Least efficient way. Again, most of that goes watering lawns and agriculture, flushing toilets, and so on. So, you know, even the argument that fluoride is good for you, if it's so good for you, then why are we wasting 90% of it on spraying farms? Mm-hmm. Even that makes no sense.
Right. I remember being a kid and getting my fluoride treatments and having that gel they make you bite down on.
Oh, yeah.
Every 2 minutes the nurse would come running in, don't swallow it, right? Like they had the suction thing in your mouth and it's sucking all the spit out, and she'd come in, you just swallow it, spit it, you know, and make you spit it all out. And then, you know, it dawned on me after, you know, years of looking into it and like, wow, why are we consuming it? You know,
Yeah. It also goes against the very principle of medical freedom. You know, even if you believe that fluoride is good for your child, shouldn't that be your decision as a parent and not the state forcing you to give that to your child through the tap water? See, those of us who believe in freedom, and that should include all Americans, because that's what the Bill of Rights says, that's what the Constitution says, that's what the national anthem, the lyrics talk about, land of the free and home of the brave. Well, I'm pretty sure the forefathers didn't mean that to say, but let's put fluoride and force it into everybody's drinking water without their knowledge. And that's not freedom. Freedom is that you have information and that you have consent to treat your body in the way you want to treat it, and to treat your children in the way that you, the parent, want to treat your children. Mass fluoridation, which was really initiated by Adolf Hitler, you know, it is a system of mass chemical poisoning and ultimately mental indoctrination into whatever other information society is being fed, other disinformation, I should say. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's a system of control. It has nothing to do with teeth, and it has everything to do with government control.
In addition to water, what else can we find fluoride in?
It's not only in tap water, it's put into water that's sold at drugstores. For example, you can go to a CVS pharmacy right now and you can find a gallon jug of water. It's called nursery water. And it says formulated with extra fluoride for growing babies or something like that. You know, it should have a skull and crossbones on it. It should be like, if you want to kill your baby, you know, feed them this. It's that bad. But it's sold as nursery water with happy little babies on it. It's just like, you know, fabric softeners that you put in your dryer, which are just absolutely loaded with toxic cancer-causing chemicals. What are they sold with? Fluffy, cuddly little teddy bears. So anytime you see this marketing imagery of babies and cuddly stuffed animals and bears and green trees and fairies, you know, usually they're selling death. They're selling you death because that's their agenda. But they're not going to package their death products with the symbology of death, you know, devil horns and crossbones, because you might notice that and you might not want to buy it. So of course they package death in something that looks inviting. It looks cute, it looks cuddly, it looks safe, it even looks like it's good for the planet. And so people buy it and they kill themselves unknowingly.
Is it deceit?
Absolutely. At the highest level, it's a spiritual level of deceit. Mm-hmm. It's not just a little marketing fib, like 3 out of 4 doctors smoke Camels. Yeah. You know, that's even though that's pretty bad deceit, but that's not at the same level of you know, drink this wonderful liquid, or have your baby drink this liquid, even though it might kill them, or it might make them infertile, so they can't have babies, and therefore end your family tree. You know, that's the kind of reality.
Are we overpopulated, in your opinion?
No, we're not overpopulated. We are over-hypnotized. We're suffering from mass delusion. It's not that we have too many people, it's that we have too little freedom. We need more liberty, we need more information, we need more long-term thinking, so that the actions that we take today as a society can contribute to a better, brighter future, no matter what the population is. I think it's too narrow-minded to focus just on the population number. That's what Bill Gates does. He's got his formula, you know, where P equals the population, and he speaks about this on stage. He says, we've got to lower the population in order to save the planet, and he's got this little formula. So you know how most people, when you go to let's say a sports game, and your team gets more points, like your football team scores or your basketball team scores, you're like, we're winning because we're getting more points, right? But in Bill Gates' world, when someone dies, that's a victory. When P goes down, P equals P minus 1 is a victory in the minds of those depopulation agenda pushers.
There's a lot of talk about depopulation, and there's a lot of companies, you know, corporations out there bidding on what to do with the population, and it's just a frightening thought, you know. And
yeah.
We were going to touch on Bill Gates actually on
a
vaccination.
Bill Gates needs to be at least touched on.
Yeah, maybe a little backhand, you think?
little TSA pat down. Hey, Billy Bob.
So neurologically, you were mentioning with the fluoride. What do we know? What do you know? What's going on neurologically with the fluoride? Is it a shutdown of?
Well, I can't speak biochemically.
Right.
I'm not a biochemist, but we do know the effects. That people who drink fluoride tend to become more docile. They lose their willpower. It's basically a chemical that saps willpower, and there are many chemicals like that exist out there. You know, SSRI drugs being another example. Many psychiatric drugs actually sap willpower. They separate you from reality. Remember the school shootings in Columbine, Colorado? Yes. Those kids said it felt like we were playing a video game as they ran around shooting all their classmates. They were on SSRI drugs. Those drugs make your mind think that you're not living in the real world, that you're actually just sort of experiencing a false reality. And I think fluoride has much the same effect. I can't say 100% because I've never dosed myself with fluoride, you know, to try to figure it out. But that seems to be the effect. When people drink fluoride, they tend to go along with vaccines, they tend to watch television news, they tend to believe what authority figures tell them, they tend to go along with TSA pat-downs. Right. You know, they go along with anything. And that's what the government wants, not people to question. I mean, that's what science wants. Science doesn't want actual scientists who question their findings. Even though the scientific method is about asking questions and then looking at the results, they want people who just go along. And fluoride is a great chemical for the evil masterminds of the world who want their populations to just go along with them.
Why do you think Europe is 98% fluoride free and we here in America are heading up the scale to 98 fluoridated?
I think Europeans have come to their senses on several issues, not all of them, but on many, GMOs being one of them and fluoride being another. They've rejected these things because they're looking at the evidence. America tends to be way behind the curve on really recognizing reality in the realm of fraudulent hoax science. So the GMOs are from Monsanto and DuPont, both U.S. corporations, very powerful corporations. They have more pull in Congress. They can influence the lawmakers and the regulators. So GMOs are likely to exist for much longer in the United States than they do in Europe. Fluoride is similar. You know, fluoride comes from the phosphate mining industry, from aluminum mining and processing industries, many of which are U.S. based. So there are financial interests in the U.S. to keep that fluoride scam running. Because remember, if fluoride is outlawed in the water, all these companies that are producing the fluoride chemical cocktails, they're going to have to pay more money to dispose of them under EPA regulations for toxic waste. So it's in their financial interest to keep the dentists and the doctors hypnotized and misinformed and promoting fluoride to the masses. You know, that's their little scam to save money. It's almost like if a company could just dump its toxic waste into the river. You know, let's say it was refining uranium, and they said, well, we're just going to dump the byproducts of uranium refining and enrichment down the river, and we're going to say radiation is good for fish because it makes them brighter. You know, they could sell that on TV. They could get on Fox News and CNN, and they could tell the whole country, oh, the fish need to be brighter so they can eat at night. Otherwise, they might starve. So we need to save the fish, which means we need to dump more radiation into the rivers, and that's why this corporation that's enriching the plutonium, let's say, or the uranium, is a good corporation that's helping to save the fish. Now, I guarantee you, 9 out of 10 people would buy that, even though I just totally made that up and it makes no sense whatsoever. It's complete nonsense.
The fluoride probably has something to do with it. It's one thing I tell people. I said, if none of this stuff bothers you, you can thank your fluoride for that. You know, really. What can we do, Mike, about getting it out? How can we, where do we start? Politically, physically?
There are two strategies for really getting fluoride out of the water supply. One is that you can have the citizens, you know, protest, go to the city council meetings, rise up against the chemical tyrants, and demand clean water. Just demand clean water, that's it. You know, get the fluoride out. If fluoride is so good for people, then they should want to take it on their own separately, right? There's no logical argument for putting medications into the water supply, because if you do fluoride, then why not put statin drugs in there? Why not put antidepressants in there? Why not put chemotherapy in the water supply and say it prevents cancer? Just put poison in there. You know, I mean, that's the argument. That's their argument. And it makes no sense. But the stronger argument, the stronger method for ending water fluoridation is to enforce existing laws against weapons of mass destruction and acts of terrorism. Now, cities that dump fluoride into the water supply are committing multiple felony acts. I mean, those people who handle the fluoride and dump it into the water are terrorists by definition. You know, terrorism is by definition using a weapon or threatening to use a weapon in order to alter the way the public responds to political interests. That's what fluoride does. Fluoride is a weapon of mass destruction by UN definitions because it's non-discriminatory. It harms infants and babies and children. You know, even the federal government warns that you shouldn't use it to make infant formula.
Just recently, right?
Yeah, just recently.
The CDC, I remember reading that.
So the people who promote fluoride, the dentists and doctors, are conspiring with terrorists. And so they should be arrested. They should be taken for interrogation, indictment, and prosecution under the Patriot Act if you want to still have that law around. It's a bad law, but it could be used against these people that are poisoning the country through the water supply. I mean, look, if you or I took a fluoride chemical, a vial of that chemical, and just went down to the river and dumped it in the river, we could be arrested for committing an act of terrorism. If you just carry it in your car, that is a hazardous chemical substance that's being transported without proper EPA authorization. You could be prosecuted under the Patriot Act for just carrying a vial of fluoride. So why can they dump it into the water supply and not be arrested? So I call on the local sheriffs and the sheriff deputies to lock and load, get their handguns, their rifles, their SWAT gear, their handcuffs, go down to the local water treatment centers and arrest everybody who's involved in water fluoridation. And let them stand trial, a trial by jury, a jury of their peers, and let's present the evidence. If they're found innocent, then fine, I can live with that. But let's present the evidence and let's enforce the law against weapons of mass destruction. I mean, we are suffering under what is essentially an act of chemical warfare in America today. That's the fluoride in the water.
Politically, it's tough. As we all know, a lot of people are, you know, complacent because of the fluoride, so they don't want to get off their tufts and go down to City Hall and make a stink. And so if we can't combat them politically, what can we do physically as far as extracting?
Well, there's nothing we can do. I mean, physically, you can't run down to the water supply center and you know, force them.
Right.
It has to be done politically.
Right.
It has to be done with the consensus of the community, and that's through education efforts like this film, like what you're doing, and that's through, you know, actual science. I mean, let's get to the science. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Instead of covering it up, instead of citing, blanket authority, let's look at the science. What do these fluoride chemicals actually do to human beings? If we can answer that question, then we have most of our answer. And then the second question is, what about the freedom aspect? What about the choice? You have all these people out there who say, I'm pro-choice, but they support water fluoridation? Well, what happened to choice with your water?
Yeah.
So I guess they're only pro-choice on certain selective things, but other things they want to be mandated and forced upon you and your children. See, that's a contradiction, a philosophical contradiction. And one of the things that I do as the health ranger is simply ask people to look at their own contradictions and be consistent with their beliefs and their actions. I mean, much of what I do actually has that common root. So why do I support legalizing marijuana even though I don't smoke marijuana? Why do I support legalizing raw milk even though I don't even drink milk? I don't even drink raw milk. Why do I support getting fluoride out of the water supply and letting parents choose what to feed their children? It's because in all of these cases I support the freedom of choice, the principles of liberty and parental responsibility rather than the state trying to be your mommy and your daddy and inject you and poison you and medicate you with all the things that the state thinks you want.
All under the guise of it's for your own good.
It's always for your own good, isn't it?
It is.
They always package everything. Well, Hitler said the same thing. We're going to use these chemicals, we're going to gas these Jews, we're going to commit this genocide. Of course, he didn't use that word, but these crimes were all done for the betterment of humanity in his mind. There's, all evil is done under the banner of improving things. Yeah. It doesn't make it right or ethical.
Water, the fluoridation program here, we, started in Grand Rapids, Michigan, back in right after World War II, ironically. And if you look at Project Paperclip, and you mentioned today on the Alex Jones show about Jim Marrs's book, Rise of the Fourth Reich, which loved, read it. And, if you look at what happened after World War II and how, a lot of people think that, National Socialism was defeated after the war. It really wasn't. We just kind of ingested the whole ideology, and it's been slowly, spreading throughout industry here, whether it be NASA, as you know, and we, right soon after World War II, we saw Grand Rapids, Michigan, again, doing the fluoridation program, and here we are today.
No, I would say socialism is the last refuge of lazy thinkers. If you want to be told what to do and you want to be told what's true by a scientific dictatorship, support socialism, because there's always somebody who's happy to tell you how to run your life. If you want to be free, if you want to have liberty, if you want to have a future that you control, your destiny is up to you as a free will, a conscious being, then you have to support the principles of liberty and the principles of respecting life. I mean, that's what a lot of this comes down to, is respecting life. Mm-hmm. Because this fluoride issue is not just about humans. This chemical goes downstream. In fact, most of it goes downstream. And these chemicals would be illegal to dump into the rivers and into the oceans, but somehow it's legal if they pass through the human body first. That makes no sense. Why is it legal to spray them on a farm and then the farm runoff goes into the river, when it would be a felony act to dump the chemicals into the river?
Mm-hmm. So it's getting into everything. Fish, wildlife, agriculture.
Sure. Fluoride, where there's fluoride added to the water, there's like a toxic mushroom cloud of effects from it, where the animals are harmed, mm-hmm. where everything downstream is harmed. I mean, who knows what it's doing to the soil microbes as well. When you spray it on farms, it could be impacting soil microbiology, which could reduce crop yields, which could actually, it could make crop pests and soil diseases more prominent. I mean, that's the result of antibiotics in mm-hmm. farming. So there could be these effects. I don't know for sure because that hasn't been studied in detail, but it's very viable.
I'm sure Monsanto's got an answer for that with their aluminum-resistant seeds they're patenting.
Yeah, well, again, they just say, we're going to feed the world, and without us, you'll be hopeless.
Yeah.
We
were talking about removing the fluoride politically, and then I mentioned, what can we do physically? What I want you to maybe touch on is what I meant by physically is, how can we extract it from our tap water?
Oh, our own water.
Yeah, our own water. What steps can we take to, reduce our exposure?
Well, there are some simple things that individuals can do. You can buy a household RO filter, reverse osmosis, that removes most fluoride but not all. You can use countertop filters and sink filters. Many of them have carbon block elements and other media inside that can collect many of the harmful elements that are packaged along with fluoride. So some fluoride has, for example, heavy metals in it. So the heavy metals will be trapped by the carbon block, even though the actual fluoride molecules themselves may not be. But you're still making it somewhat safer by using that. But the best thing is to drink rainwater, or drink spring water, or drink water from a source that is absolutely not fluoridated.
So you had mentioned rainwater and all these different varieties of resources of water out there, and we recently had an interview with Dr. Laura Presley, and she's packaging rainwater.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable. We've had it. It tastes wonderful, and so you're right. And what about chelation? What do you know about?
Well, chelation is really most effective, based on my research, in clearing out buildups in arteries, plaque, arterial plaque. Chelation is not effective, as far as I know, in removing toxic substances that are already lodged into neurological tissue. So if you're drinking aluminum, for example, or mercury, or you're getting mercury through vaccines, and that gets lodged into your brain cells, chelation is not going to remove that. There are other things that you can do to help eliminate heavy metals in certain tissues. You can do sauna treatments, and you can sweat out a lot of materials, which can include heavy metals. You can do kidney cleanses, and you can use a lot of hydration with kidney cleanse, and you can eliminate through your urine a lot of toxic substances. You can also do colon cleansing and liver cleansing and things like that. But chelation by itself is not the final solution for all this stuff. That's mostly used in the medical context for acute aluminum exposure or acute mercury poisoning, where there's still a level of circulating heavy metals in the blood that can then bind to the chelation agents very quickly and be removed that way. But it's not the answer to all these issues.
What about diet? Is there any?
Well, diet's key, especially as a preventive measure. A lot of people get mercury through seafood. And you can get aluminum through foods, and you can get, all kinds of crazy metals. You can get cadmium. Cadmium's on crops. You can get high levels of arsenic in things like brown rice syrup, right? The right diet can bind to those elements and help clear them out. So if your diet includes more organic foods and plant-based foods and chlorophyll, and apple pectin is a good one. Pectin from fruits binds with these toxic metals and helps flush them out. Certain superfoods like chlorella and herbs like cilantro also bind to heavy metals like mercury and help them pass through your body so that they don't get absorbed into your tissues. But, the best answer to this is to just limit your exposure. Don't drink out of aluminum cans that are filled with phosphoric acid. That's every soda in the world. Acid plus aluminum, and you drink it, do the math.
Yeah.
You're going to get some aluminum. So not a smart way to go. I would say absolutely do not drink tap water without filtering it. Unless you happen to be in a city that has the most pure, pristine water ever, do not drink tap water. The tap water is so bad in some cities you can actually light it on fire.
Oh, man.
That's from fracking.
I've heard a little
the
bit
oil
about it,
exploration and the natural gas exploration. They use a fracking technique, and it causes these hydrocarbons to get into the water wells that feed the city. And you can actually take a match and light your water. That's pretty bizarre. But do not drink your tap water. Always filter it before you consume it. In fact, I would even say don't shower in tap water. That's so toxic that, look, where I live now, I'm drinking and showering in either rainwater or well water. When I travel and I go to a hotel and I try to take a shower and I feel that tap water on my head and covering my body, it just makes me feel sick and almost neurologically stunned. Yeah. It's like an assault. And I can't imagine doing that every day.
And bathing in it and soaking in it. My wife, that's one thing I said is, honey, stop taking so many baths. And she has,
Get a shower filter.
We do. We have a filter now, and she fills the tub up with it. But